possessiveness, false ego, duality, and greed. So when he says my devotee, it means pure devotee. We're all aspiring pure devotees. So but when we are able to fix our minds completely on Krishna, and then we depend on Krishna for everything, even to do our activities with the body, mind, words, everything. They are always peaceful, endowed with equal vision in the sense everything as being part and parcel of Krishna. So then you become equal. When you think something is separate from Krishna, then you make differences. All the varieties, differences, that becomes more prominent. But when you see Krishna's connection with everything, there is unity in everything. You see equally everything. And and free from possessiveness, you can possess without possessiveness. It's not that only a sannyasi can become a pure devotee, but even a grihastha can become a pure devotee if you are not possessive, in spite of possessing, in quotes. No false ego, because the ego is to be a servant of Krishna. So there's no identification with the body. Our mind especially is the most wicked, which makes us which puts us into Maya and duality, happiness, distress, pain, pleasure, sorrow. So all these sort of dualities do not disturb the devotee because he is getting full experience of the Supreme Lord. So that experience is what is the most wonderful thing that we should be always seeking. I want to always experience you, Krishna. If we experience Krishna, then these dualities won't have an effect on us. But lack of experiencing Krishna, then we get put into this Maya, samsara of duality, and we only experience that with our body and senses and mind. That's why it's very important while chanting that we really, because there we have an opportunity to experience Krishna by chanting his names. So we must seek that instead of the mind always, or the body, whatever it's saying. Teshu nityam mahabhaga mahabhageshu matkataha sambhavanti hi tat nrinam jushtam prapunnanti agham. O greatly fortunate Uddhava, in the association of such saintly devotees, there is constant discussion of me, and those partaking in this chanting and hearing of my glories are certainly purified of all sins. Purport: even if one does not receive direct instructions from a pure devotee, simply by hearing him glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one can be purified of all sinful reactions caused by one's involvement in illusion. So that is the amazing thing, that just we hear from the spiritual master or a pure devotee, that itself can remove all the sinful reactions, because the Lord is so pure and he is like an antiseptic who can remove everything, all infections. So that is why we need to hear very, very attentively, so that all the dirt which is sticking, dirt and how sinful reactions go away. Sinful reactions stay because of our attachment to this body. And so whatever sins are there, those reactions or the sins themselves are still sticking. But the minute we identify with our soul and as a devotee of Krishna, then naturally it is only connected with the body and then it disappears. And so then we can always remain. It is the sin, remain in transcendental consciousness. It's the sins which are pulling us towards bodily enjoyment. And so we remain grounded. That is the problem of sin. One thing is it gives us punishment, pain, and all that. Another thing is sins keep us grounded to bodily consciousness. And then we have to suffer and enjoy according to our karmas. Hmm. Um, ताये शृण्वन्ति गायन्ति हि अनुमोदन्ति चादृता मत्परा श्रद्धदानाश्च bhaktim vindanti te mayi. Whoever hears, chants, and respectfully takes to heart these topics about me becomes faithfully dedicated to me and thus achieves my devotional service. One who hears from advanced devotees of Lord Krishna can be saved from the ocean of material existence. When one obeys the order of a bona fide spiritual master, the polluted workings of the mind are checked. One sees things in a new spiritual light, and there blossoms the propensity for selfless, loving service to the Lord, which gives the fruit of love of Godhead. So only um, we have to obey the orders of the bona fide spiritual master and hear very what do you call, with a desire to also apply it very deeply. Then what happens, the polluted workings of the mind are checked and one sees things in a new spiritual light. And that's what, when you see the same thing, a materialist will see a particular situation. And that's why in the Bhagavad Gita, 6th chapter, it says, what is night for the awakened soul is uh, daytime for the um, unregulated, or and what is day for the awakened soul is night for the materialist. So they see from a totally different perspective of material enjoyment and suffering. So everything is in terms of what is good and bad is what gives more sense gratification to the body and mind. And the spiritualist sees how in every step there is the hand of God and how it helps us to actually become happier, become more elevated. If you see the hand of Krishna, we'll feel very grateful to him that he is so personally taking care of us, that at every step we can depend on him and he's always there. That is the excitement in life, because Krishna is full of excitement, just as that's why all his devotees are full of joy, happiness, always ananda, because Krishna is exciting. And so if we keep thinking about him and depend upon him, that it is a reality, we must completely have the faith that even if I'm not experiencing Krishna all the time, only when I'm chanting, doing devotional service, afterwards completely I forget. I'm thinking of material world, talking to people, and this reality becomes, material reality seems more real, and Krishna stays somewhere in the background. Again, suddenly I might remember because of some thing, somebody says something or something reminds me, but otherwise, Krishna seems too far away for my experience. Even then, we must have complete faith that at every moment, if I think of Krishna, Krishna will be there for me. So, why, if I want his association, then I must always think about him. It depends on us. We want his association or Maya association. If we want Krishna association always, then we should always think about him. And even when we try to avoid too much intimate interactions with materialists because they will not remind us of Krishna. But being with devotees, we can always think of Krishna at every moment. And but if we are in the material world doing our duty for the pleasure of Krishna, or we are thinking, we are praying to Krishna, how I can in some way be of service to influence these people in a preaching mode, then it's okay. But if we go there and we are not fully focused on service or preaching, then it's very dangerous. The mind will definitely deviate towards sense enjoyment because that is the natural thing. It's like water, its nature is to flow down, right? It from higher to lower heights. It natural. But if you want it to flow upwards, then you have to really use a lot of pressure and all, like fountains and all that. You have to set up that mechanism by which the water will be pushed up. So similarly, our natural inclination is towards material sense gratification, mind. And in order to think about Krishna, we have to take so many efforts to, you know, keep the mind away from degradation. Bhaktim labdavath sadhu kim anyad avashishyate mayi ananta gune brahmani anandanubhavatmani. What more remains to be accomplished for the perfect devotee after achieving devotional service unto me, the supreme absolute truth, whose qualities are innumerable, and who am the embodiment of all ecstatic experience. So sweet. Krishna is saying how fortunate you are to achieve me. And it's very sweet because this is the greatest love. It's not false ego at all. If we say, oh, you're so fortunate to achieve me, that speaks of arrogance. But here, this is so sweet. Krishna is saying that this is the highest perfection to achieve me. And that is the truth. And he's saying it because he's so concerned about us. Devotional service to Lord Krishna is so pleasing that a pure devotee cannot desire anything except service to the Lord. In the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Lord Krishna told the gopis that they would have to accept their own service as the ultimate reward of their devotion to Him, since nothing awards as much happiness and knowledge as devotional service itself. When one sincerely chants and hears the holy name and fame for Lord Krishna, the heart is purified and gradually one can appreciate the actual blissful nature of Krishna consciousness, loving service to the Lord. See, that's what the gopis gave everything to Krishna, completely sold out. Even when he disappeared from their life or he teased them so much, and yet they had given up everything for him, and still they were tested so much, and still they only loved Krishna. So Krishna said that I cannot repay your love, na paraye ham, and I am always indebted to you. But and what is my payment to you for all the love that you give me is the happiness of serving me. That only is your payment. That is your award. So we can understand how just doing devotional service itself, you know, the that just doing devotional service itself is reward. We look for some reward because doing devotional service, but actually, the even if you're allowed to do devotional service to Krishna, gives so much pleasure that we don't want anything. Just let me serve Krishna. That's enough. Because when you're doing devotional service to Krishna, then we purchase Krishna. He's with us. What more can be pleasurable than that? Giving love to Krishna with our heart and then feeling the exchange of love. Krishna is so happy. He also loves us. And that itself is enough for a devotee. Then he doesn't want anything more. This Jayananda Prabhu, who's Jayananda was in America, California, one of the early disciples of Prabhupada, and who first actually started the Rath Yatra, used to build the carts. And so he was such a humble devotee, and he just happy to do menial services, even though he was actually made the temple president, because he was only concerned the most. Even though he was an engineer by profession, he didn't want to work with materialistic people. He wanted to be on his own. So he became a cab driver so that he could just be alone, not mingle with materialistic people. So all his earnings he used to give for the maintenance of the temple. And he would, or whatever work there was in the temple, he would do it. They didn't have servants and all that. Their devotees only as servants. They have to clean up everything. And they're all new devotees. Indians themselves are so lazy nowadays, and then you can imagine Westerners, they tamoguna. So they try to, just external cleanliness is what, and our kind of, they minimize work, eating, everything is minimized so that they don't have to exert themselves too much. And our Indian cooking is full of service. So naturally, the kitchen and all that, everything has to be cleaned and kept fixed. And so he himself used to do all those menial duties. In fact, and he was so blissful doing all those activities that some newcomers would come and think, oh, just this, and he would take everything and put it in the garbage and come. If a garbage person is so happy, then how the other devotees must be, they would think. They didn't know he was an advanced devotee. So um, he was doing all that, and he loved to, because he was driving and all that, and he was good. He enjoyed repairing cars. So every time they would see him under the car working on some car or the other. So when Prabhupada used to come visiting that place, Los Angeles. So then once Prabhupada came, and he sent other devotees to go and receive him. And he was busy doing work. And Prabhupada came and he asked, where is Jayananda? So then, they went and they pulled Jayananda, come, you have to see Prabhupada. All the other devotees, they were naturally rushing, and they were all gathered around Prabhupada, and they were just waiting. Just waiting to hear him and exchange with him and all that. And here, the Jayananda Prabhu was under the car doing something. And the devotees said, come, you must see Prabhupada. Okay. He came. And then he was sitting at the back and he went off to sleep because he was so tired. So, but Prabhupada had great affection for him. And he would say, once like that, he was saying, where is Jayananda? And they brought him. He looks like Lord Chaitanya, he said. And Jayananda blushed like anything. He felt so embarrassed. So, like that, because he was doing service with such devotion and dedication to Srila Prabhupada, with his savings only, Prabhupada printed that Krishna book. So he's very, very dear. Jayananda Prabhu is very dear to Prabhupada. And of course, Rath Yatra also. He's the one who made it possible. He built personally with his own hands. He built every time he built the Rath with, of course, other devotees assisting. So he was so happy in his service, he didn't want anything else. And he's so humble. And even so much so that his relationship with Prabhupada was based on his service. He didn't even have to come in front and, have some exchanges. It was all so internal, and he was blissful, and Prabhupada also loved him. So that is the amazing thing. Devotional service, it's itself the reward. So we must try to always be engaged in something. If we want always happiness, ecstasy, and that's what we're looking for, excitement, then that will completely satisfy. That we won't look search for something beyond that. There is nothing beyond that anyway. Bhaktim labdavata sadhu kim anyad avashishyate mayi ananta gune brahmani anandanu bhavatmani. What more remains to be accomplished for the perfect devotee? Oh, after achieving devotional service unto me, the supreme absolute truth, whose qualities are innumerable and who am the embodiment of all ecstatic experience. And that's what we did. Like the gopis, they were so happy just because they were serving Krishna, so happy that even they could stay in separation from him for 100 years. Can you imagine not seeing Krishna at all? And because their mood was only they could stay like that. Krishna stayed in Dwaraka, he didn't give them separation, loving service and separation, but he gave it to the gopis because they were capable, they were so ecstatic serving Krishna that even when Krishna is not there, they could survive. Yatopashray, I mean, it's not that Krishna is not there, but externally. But Krishna never leaves Vrindavan, and he was, so they could experience him, experience Krishna, but they also wanted to see him. That was missing, but they could survive that. Yatopashrayamanasya bhagavantam vibhavasum sitam bhayam tamopyeti sadhun samvetas tatham. Just as cold, fear, and darkness are eradicated for one who has approached the sacrificial fire, so dullness, fear, and ignorance are destroyed for one engaged in serving the devotees of the Lord. Not even the Lord, devotees of the Lord. Those engaged in fruitive activities are certainly dull. They lack higher awareness of the Supreme Lord and the soul. Materialists are engaged more or less mechanically in gratifying their senses and ambitions, and thus they're considered dull or practically unconscious. All such dullness, fear, and ignorance are removed when one serves the lotus feet of the Lord. Actually, Krishna is saying devotees of the Lord, but anyway, that is the same as serving Krishna. Just as cold, fear, and darkness are removed when one approaches a fire. So, so wonderful. Not a day must go without our doing some service for the cause of Krishna consciousness, for pleasing our Guru, pleasing Prabhupada and the devotees. Something we must be always looking forward to, opportunity to serve. And that we should not ask for rewards. Everybody should tell thanks to me, glorify me, appreciate me. If it comes, fine. But if it doesn't come, the payment is the happiness and the opportunity to render service. That will give us Krishna. The experience of Krishna comes, whatever, when we just leave it to Krishna and not be on the mental platform desiring different things. Mind is the one which asks for material sense gratification. And the more we ignore it and pray to Krishna, please give me that happiness of serving you. It might be difficult to switch from mode of passion to mode of goodness. It takes some time. It won't happen overnight because we're so used to looking for something external for our happiness. But we have to make the switch. When it doesn't come, then we pray to Krishna and when you chant Hare Krishna mantra, then you feel pacified. And then gradually the desire will disappear by Krishna's mercy. Nimmajyonmajjatam ghore bhavad bhavad bhav no bhavad dhau paramayanam santo brahmavida shanta naur dridave Dhride Vapsu Majjatam. The devotees of the Lord, peacefully fixed in absolute knowledge, are the ultimate shelter for those who are repeatedly rising and falling within the fearful ocean of material life. Such devotees are just like a strong boat that comes to rescue persons who are at the point of drowning. So that's what the devotees of the Lord peacefully fixed in absolute knowledge. When we see Guru Maharaj, everybody is so happy just to see him. He doesn't even have to open his mouth and speak. He's just seeing him only. Everybody is so happy because he's fixed in absolute knowledge. And he, such devotees are the ultimate shelter for those who are repeatedly rising and falling within the fearful ocean of material life. Such devotees are just like a strong boat that comes to rescue persons who are at the point of drowning. Right? So that is why we should really pray. They've requested that to pray, for his good health. We must pray because he's like the strong boat, and we are at the point of drowning. Otherwise, if we don't have such mercy, can you imagine? How will we have the faith? That pure devotee means what? We have to see it, otherwise we won't know. We'll think, it's all imagination. Nobody can be so pure, right? We will convince ourselves. But when you see him, when you see a pure devotee, of course, when you read Prabhupada's books, you're convinced, this is a pure devotee, he's come from Vaikuntha. We are convinced. But then, where are they now? Like, that's what when I read Prabhupada's books, I was convinced, yeah, Prabhupada is the guru, everything. Then, will I meet such a person now? He's not there. And I never met any guru till then. And so somehow I got the opportunity to see Guru Maharaj. And when I saw him, I started crying. It must be experience for others also. I've seen others also crying first time when they see Guru Maharaj. Because it's unbelievable that such people exist, such pure devotees fixed in the absolute knowledge. He looks so peaceful, so peaceful. Then, my God, how can you be so peaceful? So much surrendered to Krishna. And that is, such devotees are like a strong boat that comes to rescue persons who are at the point of drowning. Annam hi praninam prana, artanam sharanam tvaham, dharmo vittam rinam pretya, santorvag bibhyato rinam. Just as food is the life of all creatures, just as I am the ultimate shelter of the distressed, and just as religion is the wealth of those who are passing away from this world, so my devotees are the only refuge of persons fearful of falling into a miserable condition of life. Those fearful of being dragged down by material lust and anger should take shelter of the lotus feet of Lord's devotees who can engage one safely in the Lord's loving service. Just as food is the life of all creatures, just as, and for food it says annam, here, food, annam, that is. And just as I am the ultimate shelter for the distressed, and just as religion is the wealth of those who are passing away from this world, yeah, religion is what will determine where they go at the end of life. So my devotees are the only refuge of persons fearful of falling into a miserable condition of life. So those fearful of being dragged down by material lust and anger should take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord's devotee who can engage one safely in the Lord's loving service. That is the wonderful, positive option available for a person who may be degraded, and everyone else will criticize them. They'll find faults. He's like this, he's like that, and no good. Let us discard him. But devotees, I mean, if you just take shelter, that much you have to do. You're ready, okay, please help me, and you take shelter, then devotees are like really very, very compassionate, and they will engage such a soul, whatever they may be. Please serve Krishna. Engage them in some service because they know that will completely purify them, take away all their material weaknesses, lust, anger. Sometimes in the beginning, devotees display a lot of anger. They're quarreling always, fighting always, but we have to put up with it because if they are sincerely serving, if they are and they're trying, then we have to remind them, okay, now, okay, no problem. Don't get so angry afterwards. And we slowly, but we have to tolerate because they might erupt and all that. Why? Because if they're taking medicine, then they will come out of that. So the devotees are the only refuge of persons. That is the last resort, taking shelter. Like anybody can go to Guru Maharaj and they feel confident, whatever they might have done, whatever situation, and then he will say, okay, come to Mayapur. And some service or the other he'll find for them. Or everywhere also he tries to this thing, be merciful. And like that, of course, those who are following him also, all of us should, give shelter and mercy to people, because there really is nothing, no other shelter but Krishna. Santo dishanti chakshumsi bahir arka samuttita devata bandhava santa atma ham evacha. My devotees bestow divine eyes, whereas the sun allows only external sight, and that only when it is risen in the sky. My devotees are once real worshipable deities and real family. They are the one's own self, and ultimately they are non different from me. Foolishness is the wealth of the impious, who place great value on their treasure and firmly make up their minds to remain in the darkness of ignorance. Saintly devotees of the Lord are just like the sun. By the light of their words, the living entity's eyes of knowledge are opened and the darkness of ignorance is destroyed. Thus, the saintly devotees are one's real friends and relatives. They are the proper recipients of service, not the gross material body which merely clamors for sense gratification. So we're constantly serving our own bodies that is only asking for sense gratification. Instead, we should serve the saintly devotees who are giving knowledge, like the sun. And in fact, Krishna is saying even the sun allows only external sight, only from that vision of the material world, whereas internal vision is given divine eyes. My devotees bestow divine eyes to see within the soul. My devotees are one's real worshipable deities and real family. They are one's own self. And ultimately, that's why, because they are non different from Krishna, they are like one's own self. Because, like the Paramatma is one's own self. And someone who's representing Paramatma is like their own self and their real family. And ultimately, they are non different from me. How much Krishna is glorifying his devotees. Vaitasenastathopi evam urvasya loka nisprihah mukta sango mahim etam atma ramas chacharah. Thus, losing his desire to be on the same planet as Urvashi, Maharaja Pururava began to wander the earth, free of all material association and completely satisfied within the self. Thus, in the purports of the humble servant of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, to the 11th canto, 26th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled the Aila Gita. So that Aila Gita, Pururava became, imagine, he was so much life, I think he took another birth, or he was so much mad after Urvashi. And because somehow he got this knowledge. I mean, so Krishna is narrating the past, the story of Pururava and Urvashi. Because Urvashi he had met in the earth as a king, and then she left and went away. Then he did so much tapasya to go to her planet, and then and then after that he came to his senses. So one can easily overcome whatever this unnecessary attachments to material life which cripple us. It's like moha, illusion. We are and something we think without that I cannot be. And that is actually an impediment in our progress. And we must, whatever it may be, subtle attachments, gross attachments, we have to work on that by giving up, by taking shelter of the Lord and serving Vaishnavas, praying, please remove all these attachments from my heart, which is clouding my vision of the reality of Krishna. So we go to chapter 27, the Lord Krishna's instructions on the process of deity worship. So this is very special because Krishna himself is telling how to do deity worship. In this chapter, the Supreme Personality of Godhead explains the process of Kriya Yoga or deity worship. Worshipping the deity form of Supreme Lord automatically brings purity and satisfaction to the mind. Thus, it is the source of all desirable gains. If a person has no engagement in deity service, he will simply remain attracted to material sense gratification and he'll have no hope of giving up bad association. The personality of Godhead is given instruction among the regulations of the Satvata scriptures on the process of worshipping him as the bona fide deity. Brahma, Shiva, Narada, Vyasa, all of the sages have recommended this process described by the Lord as most perfectly beneficial for all the occupational classes and spiritual orders of human society, including even the women and Shudras. There are three varieties of Archana, deity worship. So, deity worship, even women are included. That is to be noted, and even Shudras, all occupational classes. There are three varieties of Archana, deity worship, based on either the original Vedas, the secondary Tantras, or a combination of these. The deity image, the ground, the fire, the sun, the water, and the heart of the worshipper are all true locations of the deity's presence. Sorry. The deity form to be worshipped may be constructed of any one of the eight substances: stone, wood, metal, clay, paint, sand, that means drawn upon the ground, the mind, or jewels. These are the eight substances in which we can have the deity to worship. These categories are further subdivided into two: temporary and permanent. The details of worshipping process are as follows. The devotee should bathe both physically and by chanting mantras, and then he should perform the utterance of Gayatri at the prescribed juncture of the day. He should arrange a seat facing either east or north, or, or else directly facing the deity, and should bathe and clean the deity. Then he should present clothing and ornaments, sprinkle water on the vessels and other paraphernalia to be used in the worship, and offer water for bathing the deity's feet, arghya, water for washing his mouth, fragrant oils, incense, lamps, flowers, and food preparations. After this, one should worship the Lord's personal servants and bodyguards, his consort energies, and the spiritual masters by chanting their respective Mula mantras. The worshipper should recite prayers from the Puranas and other sources, offer obeisances flat on the ground, beg for benediction, and place on himself the remnants of the Lord's garlands. Included in this method of deity worship are the proper installation of the transcendental deity by constructing a fine temple, and also conducting of processions and other festivals. By worshipping Lord Hari with unconditional devotion in this manner, one gains access to pure loving service to his lotus feet. But if one steals property that has been given as charity to the deity or the brahmanas, whether given by himself or by others, he'll have to take his next birth as a stool-eating worm. Text 1. Shri Uddhava Vacha Kriya Yogam Samachakshva Bavad Aradhanam Prabhu Yasmatvam Ye Yatarchanti Satvata Satvarash Rishabha. Shri Uddhava said, My dear Lord, O Master of the devotees, please explain to me the prescribed method of worshipping you in your deity form. What are the qualifications of those devotees who worship the deity? On what basis is such worship established? And what's the specific method of worship? In addition to performing their prescribed duties, devotees of the Lord engage in regulated worship of the Lord in his deity form in the temple. Such worship acts powerfully to cleanse the heart of both the lust to enjoy one's material body and the material family attachment that results directly from this lust. To be effective, however, the process of deity worship must be performed in the authorized way. Therefore, Uddhava now inquires from the Lord about this subject. Hmm. So, I mean, just having deities at home is very wonderful way of developing a service attitude. Otherwise, people be going about thinking, this is my house and I am the Lord of this house and everything, in that mood. But the minute you put deities in the house and we worship them and do render service, just offering sorry, all the different things which are supposed to be this thing, and then bow down, and just by serving him, automatically the service mood comes, and we stop thinking of ourselves as one big Lord. So if we think like we have a Lord, then all those weaknesses, lust will be very much there. And the lust to enjoy one's material body and the material family attachment that results directly from this lust. Family attachment will be there, but it has to be like based on helping one another to advance in spiritual life. That is okay. So, like Vidura, he was very attached to his brother, and he came at the end, even though he had been kicked out and all that, but still he forgot that. He still had affection, and he was not a preacher. He was not going around telling everyone to about Krishna or anything. He came specifically to deliver his brother from the clutches of Maya. So, and his brother also immediately accepted it, even though he was quite harsh in his criticizing his situation because he wanted to cut the illusion from his mind. And then Vidura was very affectionate to the Pandavas and to everyone in the family. So it's not a lack of affection. It is just that and he was married also. Vidura and his wife, both of them together were serving Krishna when he came to their house. Right? Krishna came even without his invitation, he came to his house. Um, Whereas Duryodhana told him, requested him to eat, and he refused. No, no, I'm not eating. I'm going to Vidura's house. He got a shock. Imagine going to Vidura was considered, I mean, lesser because Shudra's son and all that. So, and then he wants to know about this worship of the deities. Etad vadanti munayo muhur निःश्रेयसं नृणां नारदो भगवान् व्यासम् आचार्यो Angirasasuta. After the great sages repeatedly declare that such worship brings the greatest benefit possible in human life. This is the opinion of Narada Muni, the great Vyasadeva, and my own spiritual master, Brihaspati. What Uddhava is saying. Nishritam te मुकाम्भोजात् यद् आह भगवान् अज पुत्रेभ्यो भृगुमुक्तेभ्यो देव्यै च भगवान् भव एतद्वै सर्ववर्णानाम् आश्रमाणां च सम्मतं श्रेयसाम् उत्तमं मन्ये श्रीशूद्राणां च मानधाम. O most magnanimous Lord, the instructions on this process of deity worship first emanated from your lotus mouth. Then they were spoken by the great Lord Brahma to his sons, headed by Bhrigu, and by Lord Shiva to his wife Parvati. This process is accepted by and appropriate for all the occupational and spiritual orders of society. Therefore, I consider worship of you in your deity form to be the most beneficial of all practices, even for women and Shudras. Etat Kamalapatraksha Karmabandha Vimochanam Bhaktaya Chanuraktaya Bruhi Vishveshwareshwara. O lotus-eyed one, O Supreme Lord of all lords of the universe, please explain to your devoted servant this means of liberation from the bondage of work. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Nahyanto Ananta Parasya Karmakandasya Chodava Sanshiptam Varnayisyami Yathavad Anupurvasa. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, My dear Uddhava, there is no end to the innumerable Vedic prescriptions for executing deity worship. So I shall explain this topic to you briefly, one step at a time. Purport. Here the word Karmakanda refers to the various Vedic methods of worship, culminating in deity worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Just as the means of sense gratification and material renunciation are innumerable, the transcendental pastimes and qualities the Supreme Personality of Godhead enjoys in his own abode, called Vaikuntha, are also innumerable. The various concepts of piety and methods of purification in the material world ultimately cannot be reconciled amongst themselves without accepting the absolute truth, the personality of Godhead. Yes, just a minute. Just